Hello, my name is Chris Aviles. I'm a teacher in the Fairhaven School District in Fairhaven, New Jersey, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about Makerspaces. Everything you could ever want to know about getting your own makerspace started. This is Makerspaces 101. Now, the most important thing I want you to take away from today is the fact that the makerspace is anything that you want it to be. Your journey in your makerspace is going to be different than everybody else's journey, right? It's important that you know, if you ask 100 people what is a makerspace, what should be in a makerspace, you're going to get 100 different answers, and that's why ultimately it is whatever you want it to be. My makerspace is really unique, and it's going to probably look a lot different than yours, right? I got started here in Fairhaven about 5 years ago, and when I got here, they asked me to start a makerspace for students in 5th and 6th grade. And what I did was I wanted to teach my students computer science, digital arts, design thinking, and engineering. And the way, specifically I taught engineering was we would take things apart. A lot of these electronics have codes that you can then Google and find out what they do, and I would try to have the kids put things back together, right? That was one of their favorite activities. And as you can imagine, right, a lot of my kids had never held a screwdriver before. Being in 5th and 6th grade, it was really hard for them to put things back together. And that's why, right, as much as we love taking things apart, we were left with a lot of junk. And so what I decided to do is I asked my students, I said, look, guys, we have all this stuff. What can we do with it, right? And this is really where my makerspace journey took off. My students decided that they wanted to take these parts and turn them into artwork. So I bought them things like a Dremel and some other tools, and next thing you know, right, my kids started the Parts to Arts initiative. They were taking all this leftover junk and turning it into jewelry, things like circuit board hearts and earrings. We were making pieces of artwork. We were taking computer parts and making things like this wave painting that you see here. And even like little companies started to pop up. And really that's when I knew I was onto something, right? So the year after we started to have all these different, pieces of artwork now laying around the classroom. And students asked me, could we sell them? So they started Parts to Arts, then they decided they wanted to sell their art. So I built them an online store called FH Gizmos. And on FH Gizmos, we sold our 3D printings, we sold some of our, Parts to Arts and jewelry and all these different things. And that's really when my makerspace again started to take off, because for me, my makerspace focuses on entrepreneurship, right? The makerspace for me is a great place to incorporate entrepreneurship because students are making things and that stuff usually just goes home or it sits there, it gets thrown out. Why not try to sell them so they can learn about entrepreneurship, which I think is an incredibly valuable skill for the future, along with sales and finance and marketing, as well as product design. And so again, this is what my makerspace looks like now, right? It was mostly focused on computer science, digital arts, design thinking, and engineering, and a lot of that is still there, but now the focus is building products and selling them to the community. And so my 6th grade store is FH Gizmos, and in FH Gizmos we've done things like started a company that sells survival bracelets. Some of my girls figured out how to take a picture and 3D engrave it into a piece of wood using our laser cutter. One of my boys' teams was custom cutting boards. They did really well. I had a group of girls who worked with Ohio State there to come up with some type of tick repellent because her older sister had Lyme's disease and she didn't want anybody else's older sister, right, to get Lyme's disease. We'd have things like these shadow boxes where people would send in things that meant something to them, and my girls would make these, shadow boxes full of somebody's memories. I had boys custom engraving picture frames. This is one of my all-time favorite businesses right here, is they decided to make bracelets to support Autism Speaks, and they took things a step further and they contacted one of our local businesses called Moonchild, where they've been able to sell their bracelets in retail, since September of this year. And, I try to get my kids out of the building, so we go out to our local shopping malls and kids sell their products so they could get out of the classroom and interact with people. So that was a great experience. My 7th grade class, because even though I started with 5th and 6th grade, my school district asked me to expand the program 2 years later just because the makerspace had really taken off. And so my 7th grade class became a class where agriculture meets technology. We work in the gardens and we sell basil, and so we package our basil, as you can see here, and we sell it to our local pizzerias. So the kids, again, are getting out of the classroom and learning, some of those soft skills, some of those social skills that are so important. Here we also make our own soil. We also make our own fertilizer using our worm farms. We have aquaponics and hydroponics basil that we sell. We've done mushrooms this year. On the left, we have Mars soil stimulant that NASA sent us, so we can grow. We can practice growing for if and when we get to Mars. My boys on the right are building a rain garden because the back of our garden had a lot of flooding issues. We can see that, I use my Raspberry Pi sensors that my kids build to monitor the greenhouse and to monitor the plants. We've built Raspberry Pi weather stations, and I even allow my kids to do an initiative called Gaming for Good, where they stream video games in an attempt to raise awareness for a cause that they care about. Right? So my 6th grade makerspace is about product design. 7th grade, we run an agriculture business together. So we're selling those vegetables, we're selling those herbs and fruits to the community. Anything left over goes to our soup kitchen, and we're also using our engineering and computer science skills to monitor and collect data on everything that we're doing. And then finally, in 8th grade, right, FH Leads is a business incubator. We work with our local hospital. You can see here doing a demo on phlebotomy. They've asked us to improve the phlebotomy experience. On the left, you can see that we're using an RFID tracker to track missing wheelchairs. On the right, we're trying to recreate a hospital gown with dignity. And, we also reach out to our community again. On the left-hand side, we have a woman who owns an antique shop, and we have a gentleman who owns a psychology service, but neither of them really were into social media marketing, and so that's where my kids came in. They learned and then helped these businesses run their social media marketing campaign. On the left is our local karate studio. He came in and did a demo, self-defense demo for the entire school, and those boys helped him arrange it. While a lot of people were banning Fortnite, I was embracing it, and so I had a team that organized a Fortnite tournament at our local pizzeria. To the left, we have our local ice cream shop where my girls worked to do a 7-district ice cream challenge. We have the Pilates project to the right, a local Pilates studio that had girls organize a mother-daughter Pilates class for her. Right, my most successful business to the left there is a business called Student Lawn and Dog Care. Right, they made over $1,500 this year. Mowing lawns, walking dogs, and all that good stuff, but they worked on the marketing, the finance, the sales, and preparing in class. And to the right, I had teams that were a little bit more hands-on. That's one of my teams that was building they called it an aquaponics ladder. It was a ladder that you could hang on the wall if you happen to live in an area where you couldn't have access to fruits and vegetables. Let's say you're in an apartment and you could build your own hydroponic system. And the kids at the end had the option to donate some of their money to causes they care about. You can see some of that here. And again, this is my journey. This is my makerspace. My makerspace started out as more project-based learning, focusing on computer science, digital arts, engineering, design thinking. The kids started the Parts to Arts initiative, and from there we embraced entrepreneurship. And so that when it was 5th and 6th grade, the more traditional makerspace, I pushed it down to 4th and 5th grade, and now my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we really run with that entrepreneurship piece. And what's important to realize, again, is this is my journey, this is my makerspace, this is the way that my community and my kids have influenced our journey, into makerspaces. And yours is going to be different. And so what I want to talk to you about is some other tips that you can take with you, right? Some other things that you should know when you're starting a makerspace so you can have the best makerspace that you can. But before that, I thought I would give you a quick tour of my actual space, right? A lot of times we get to hear about makerspaces, but we don't actually get to see them because every makerspace is different, and I wanted to show you mine. So here's what it looks like when you come into our makerspace. I share my area with the library, so you can kind of get an idea of how books and technology coexist. I'll kind of give you a 360 before I show you some of the stuff that I have in here. There are our wonderful librarians. And this is kind of what the space looks like, big picture. And let's jump in and look at some of the tech. See, as I have our creative problem-solving process on the wall. You can see we start with empathy, then we define, imagine, make, and test with our users, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Over here in my blue cabinet, one thing I want to talk about, number one, is nothing has doors on it and nothing has lids on it, so that way kids know that they could go in and grab what they need. Up here on my first shelf is all my Raspberry Pi stuff. Here in my second shelf, I have some digital tablets for kids who might need to draw. I have some cleaning supplies because things get messy. I have microphones so kids could do some I have microphones so kids could do some podcasting. In the back here, I have some supplies that kids could take apart, iPads and iPhones and other electronic devices, so I got some tools for that in there. Down here, I have some of my marketing materials, as well as some basil seeds. I have some jerseys for my esports teams, and down below I have some more storage, as well as you can see some yarn and string, which goes along with this cart over here, which is a lot of my beads and jewelry making type of stuff. Next to that, I have my bins. Bins are always wonderful. You'll notice that some bins are labeled Ask First, so kids know that they should talk to me before taking that stuff. But you'll see we have some batteries, we have some Arduinos, we have some lily pads, we have some magnets that we took out of some speakers, we have some rope, we have a lot of wires for things that might need to be hooked up. Just some leftover stuff. We have some locks, we have some headphones, makey kits, Play-Doh. Play-Doh is great. Play-Doh is great, one for makey kit, but two for making molds, and then we use hot glue to make a mold. We have some video game controllers. We have a lot of kids who enjoy making video games, so that way they can play with that. A lot of wires down here. We have some seeds for the garden down below, but you know, good stuff like that. In my tool cart, I have my 3D printer over here. You can see a couple projects. This is a 3D scan that we've done. One of the businesses does 3D scanning. So I have a MakerBot. I'll tell you, a lot of people think you need to have a 3D printer for Makerspace. I'm actually not a fan because it's a lot of work to maintain a 3D printer. So if you don't have one, don't worry about it. It's not worth it in my opinion. It's really hard to maintain a 3D printer. But we have a Dremel as a drill press. We have some tools, right? Never buy new tools. Ask community members to donate them or get them at a garage sale because students will break them, so don't buy anything nice. That's empty. We've got some hot glue guns. We have some more empty drawers. Got some post-it notes, right? We do a lot of brainstorming using post-it notes, so I got a ton of that. Over here down below are just some student products. These are my laptops. So students who want to do some serious, 3D design, game design, stuff like that, will use the more powerful laptops. This is a Glowforge, which is a laser cutter. If you had to choose between a 3D printer and a laser cutter, I would highly suggest a laser cutter. They are wonderful. You'll also notice things are pretty messy. That's all just part of the gig, right? Over here I have some donated iPods and devices that we take apart and see how they work. This is most of my 3D printing filament and stuff down here. What else do we have? More storage. You'll see that student storage is a real big part of a makerspace. If you're going to think about something, think about how you're going to store student projects. These are some donated laptops or broken laptops that we take apart. Up here is the iPads that we use, right? A lot of my kids will do social media marketing, so we use iPads for that, or if they want to capture some of what they're doing, right? A lot of artifacts and stuff like that is great for makerspaces. When you have to grade, right, have the kids handed artifacts. We have a Dremel and all the stuff that goes along with the Dremel. So these are pretty good. These are skill drills that also have an attachment that allows kids to cut cardboard, right? When I work with younger kids, it was funny to watch them struggle to cut cardboard. We have some, first, second, and third seating areas, right? For group work, for whole class instruction, and then for individual. That's what first, second, and third seating is. This is a hydroponics rack that we built that we had to shut down because we got some downy mildew, so we're in the middle of cleaning that. We keep all our hydroponics and aquaponics supplies. This is our aquaponics tank. That's when fish fertilize the plants clean the water for the fish. You can see we're growing basil because basil is an in-demand spice. It's also super easy to grow. This is our cardboard cart, right? You never can have too much cardboard, so we try to keep it in there. We have some grow boxes up here. We're growing some strawberries for a project. Here's that Mars soil simulant we talked about. We're growing space tomatoes. And then over back here, we have some more student storage. So things to think about, student storage, some idea of what I have in here that you can use. But again, it's one of those things where take what you can get and you build up what you need as things go by. And so here's a shared space. The library and the makerspace can coexist. And I'll show you real quick in here. This is our recording studio, but the recording studio has also been taken over by some of my teams who are doing some work with pallets. And we have the green screen painted on so students could do some green screening and stuff like that. So it's a mess, but so is learning, very messy. And that's what my makerspace looks like. So hopefully you join my makerspace. Hopefully you understand how a lot of things about a makerspace is making do with what you have, right? A makerspace is anything you want it to be. It could be anywhere. You have to make do with what you have sometimes. And one of the biggest things that you need to do as an educator, and I think this is where I think this is a really important tip. Even if you don't have a dedicated space, and I'll be honest, I don't like the fact that makerspaces are often a dedicated space for making, which makes students think that they can't do this this making in other places, right? If you're looking to get started in a makerspace, or even better, if you're looking to bring making into your classroom, right, it's important that you move toward making. And the way that you do that is you're gonna ask students this question: how would you like to show me what you learned? Before I started here at Fairhaven, I was actually a high school English teacher. And, I had to do the whole essay thing and the benchmark thing, but the end of every unit, I asked students, how would you like to show me what you learned? And that was all of a sudden they started to make video games, they started to do book trailers, they started to make movies, and they started to do skits. Especially if you really want to take it to the next level, I banned PowerPoints and slideshow presentations, right? The combination of how would you like to show me what you learned and banning slideshows and PowerPoints and stuff like that really forces kids to get creative. And so as an English teacher, I knocked out everything else I had to do as an English teacher, but it was really that end of the unit, that mastery type of project that I made time for right at the end of each English lesson was, how would you like to show me what you learned? And so beyond being a makerspace being whatever you want it to be, I think this may be the most important thing you take back to your classroom. There is no secret to this. There is no special formula. There's nothing magic about running a makerspace, right? It's getting kids making, it's letting kids be student-centered, and really for me, how would you like to show me what you learned was a big way that got me started into this. You also want to develop a creative problem-solving process, right? A makerspace, the garden, the businesses, nothing but problems. Right? When we face a problem, right, what are your students going to do? I use a design thinking process that starts with empathy, and then they define the problem, then they imagine a solution, they make a solution, they test a solution with the users, right, who they need to, and then they go back and do it all over again until they have the perfect solution to solve somebody's problem, right? So whether it's making in the classroom or a dedicated makerspace, please make sure you have a creative problem-solving process. And if you're not sure where to start with that, design thinking out of the D School at Stanford is a great place to start. The other thing you want to do is you want to make it real and you want to make it relevant. One of the things I love about making, one of the things I love about especially the entrepreneurship piece is it's all real. The kids run real businesses that solve real problems. They make real money, right? It's relevant to them. It's in and with their community, and all that stuff is really important. So as you are working on your makerspace and deciding what your makerspace is going to be, make sure you make it real and make sure you make it relevant. Another big one is you don't have to be the expert, right? There's a lot of projects, there's a lot of things that my students work on in their makerspace that I'm not the expert at. The best example is the garden. When I started the gardening part of the makerspace, FH Grows, I've never gardened in my life, right? But what I did do is I reached out and I gave myself time. I let kids know that I'm not an expert. We're going to leverage some relationships, and what I did is I reached out to Rutgers University here in New Jersey, and they've been wonderful. They sent master gardeners. They've been very supportive, and so it's important that, number one, right, you understand that you don't have to be the expert. And once you accept the fact that you don't have to be the expert to run a makerspace, you have to give yourself time. The Fairhaven Innovates program that I run that you can check out at fairhaveninnovates.com is really a very successful program, but it didn't start that way, right? I'm 5 years into this journey. So understand, number one, you don't have to be the expert to run a wonderful makerspace. Number two is you have to give yourself time. right? Time to grow the program, time to listen to student voice, time to get all the supplies you need, time to work out all the kinks, right? Because again, luckily you have that creative problem solving process, because makerspaces are nothing but problems. I spend most of my time troubleshooting, right? And that's really it, right? If you're looking to get started with makerspaces, just jump in. Whether you have a dedicated space, whether you are sharing the classroom with, like I am, with the library, or whether you just want to bring making into your own classroom by asking students, how do you want to show me what you learned, right? Making is really easy. You just have to do it, right? And so if you embrace that, if you embrace the maker spirit of just getting in there and getting it done, you're going to have a makerspace that is a wonderful place full of student learning. If I could be of any help on your journey, please don't hesitate to reach out. My name is Chris Aviles. You can hit me up at techedupteacher.com or techedupteacher on all social media. I would love to continue the conversation. But this has just been a brief overview of what makerspaces are, which is anything that you want it to be, and how you can get it started, right? Just by asking students, how would you like to show me what you learned? Thank you.